Yes.
Did I get?
Oh, interesting.
Went to my drafts. Okay, good.
It came to me.
I just resent it. So.
All right, I'm ready to get started.
Yeah.
Looks like we have a lot of planning team members in the room, hopefully some municipal partners from what I can see. Good morning. Great. Sorry for not joining you in person. I came down with a cold and it looks like it might be COVID. So, at any rate, my first bout with COVID all this time. So that's why I'm not there. No donuts, but glad I could join you this way. The agenda for today is some update on the MS4, some good workshops we've had, and the Stroud Funding, the Technical Assistance Group, which I'm really excited about, and then the flooding study. I did invite Beth Mahoney and DEP if they had anything to share or anything to present, and did not hear anything. So I don't have a DEP update. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because these two of these presentations are on CWMP YouTube channel. But we had the MS4 Resources workshop back on August 30th, and back in 2021, that was one thing that the municipalities told us: can you help us to share public resources, sort of make a clearinghouse for all those resources? And we've done that through the website. Thanks to Andrew Holmesy and all the planning team members. I think we have a pretty robust website. You've all seen this before. We have the resources for homeowners, farmers, building projects. And then if you're a cost share member, the red bubble is for you. And one of the things we heard this year was, can you give us sort of a shortcut guide on how to use those resources, especially for staff who may not normally attend these meetings? Maybe it's a secretary or administrative person who's responsible for posting on the web or social media or printing flyers. So that's what we did. We updated the guide, and the guide is updated so it's sort of plug and play. We literally give you language that you can plug in. And so during that workshop, we reviewed all of this in an hour. So for example, you can simply take these tabs and you can cut and paste this onto your web page or whatever you like, and it just gives them a direct link to these resources. So a real easy way to provide some public education to your residents. So I encourage you to do that. Similarly, on the MS4, Chester County Water Resource Authority did a nice job putting a summary of the MS4 program. Similarly, you can post that, plug and play, just copy and paste. Calendar, we've talked a lot about. I have an intern from Westchester. She's kept the calendar well populated with CWMP activities, Penn State Extension, everything from well safety to yesterday. I don't know if we posted that. There was a good workshop on the stormwater manual. All of that's on there. This is an easy link. You can just post this calendar on your website. So that's all in that guide. If you have any trouble, contact me or Andrew. Then, as you know, password protected. If you're a cost share member, there's 39 now cost share members out of 42. You have this password and you can get access to the stormwater ad, the social media posts, flyers, articles, and things like that. We updated the stormwater social media posts and the flyers, the articles. So we posted 2 new articles this fall. One was Green Stormwater Infrastructure. So that goes with the GSI brochure. That was a handout I brought. But a good way for municipalities to share with their residents what is green stormwater infrastructure. They could click and get the brochure. And then DEP, the only sort of input I got from DEP was, can you make sure municipalities have a way to report illicit stormwater discharges? So we made an article and a flyer about illicit stormwater discharges. And then we have flyers, as I mentioned. So we just had, I think it's 3 or 4, thanks to Shane, translated to Spanish. And I just gonna test it with a few Spanish speaking people to make sure the translations are good. And we'll be posting those in Spanish. We chose flyers that might appear, have people dealing in that community with different things like illicit stormwater discharge. So I'm excited to post those soon. And that's all what your CWMP fee helps pay for. And then this is the illicit discharges. So Kate and I think John helped me with this. So we just have information on what is an illicit discharge, so it's easier for you to post it. All of these flyers are written, kind of insert your name at the bottom. So all of a sudden now they belong to your municipality and you can share those. And then we've had a good year of workshops. Back in June, we had the Public Works Workshop for Green Stormwater Infrastructure. That was so popular, we're going to offer it again in the spring with the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professionals. We had 50 people sign up again for Lawn to Meadow, October 3rd. So that's very popular. Have a request maybe to offer it on a weekend or an evening so residents can attend. Our target has been municipalities, but we're getting HOAs and residents interested. We're working with the Master Watershed Stewards. They have the Watershed Friendly Yard certification, and they have a presentation we're going to test this winter. For municipalities, you might be able to have a Master Watershed Steward present this to your municipality, or maybe a group like the White Clay municipalities. So that'll be coming up. We want to repeat the elected official meeting. That's in January or February. I think we're going for February so that newly elected officials have a chance to get through the orientation. But we thought that breakfast meeting at Northbrook worked out well last year. And so those are the workshops. So the MS4 Resources workshop is on YouTube. So anyone can go see that. Are there any questions about those resources or how to get to them? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions. So I want to thank my planning team for helping to keep that website up and going, especially Andrew. And then just, I think it was Thursday last week, David Wise at Stroud Water Research gave a webinar on a really great funding program, probably the best deal you're going to get for planting buffers through Stroud Funding that they have secured. I'm just going to go through these slides quickly. And again, this one is also posted on CWMP YouTube channel. But what offer is from Stroud is to offer technical assistance to establish a forested buffer. Stroud staff will oversee the implementation. It's the full cost for installation and full cost for 3 years of care and planting. That's why I say it's probably the best deal you're going to get. What's the catch? They're ideally looking for 2+ acres with no livestock. I'll talk about, he has a slide later about that. Buffers installed by Stroud. And it does require an agreement, 25-year agreement, which basically is that you agree not to disturb that buffer, cut it down, remove it. The partner is encouraged to perform mowing. That takes some stress off of them. That's the biggest cost and difficulty is mowing for at least 3 years, but not required. They can do some mowing, and the partner does provide care after the 3 years. The fine print is they would consider smaller sites if the owner would do the mowing maintenance, and they may consider sites with livestock, although that's a different source of funding. So we are still putting in exclusion fences, so still interested in that. The Stroud can give you a copy of the 3-page agreement. It's not very difficult. It's only a 3-pager, so it's kind of short and sweet. The partner is encouraged to perform the mowing if you can. That can be a bottleneck in getting the work done. The partner that's the landowner, of course, performs care after 3 years. But typically that isn't as much work once the trees are established. We're looking for buffers of 35 feet per side, but they know that some landowners, you can only do one side, the other side's another landowner or forested, so they're open to that. These are the container seedlings, those 18 to 30-inch container seedlings planted at 194 trees per acre. That's a 15 by 15 spread. There's the detailed maintenance plan. They are installing stone mulch, which is a good way to keep the rodents from chewing the bark and reduce herbicide use. And they've had great success with that. if your site has a lot of invasives, they have a limited budget to do that. And if you've ever done one of these projects, sometimes the clearing with a forestry mower costs more, significantly more than the tree planting, but they have some limited funds to do that preparation. And the best way to move forward is to contact David Wise. I do have flyers in my briefcase. I think I've circulated them via email. I have a new flyer that has the link to the YouTube channel. But again, if you put in CWMP YouTube, it'll come up. And so that's the offer from Stroud. Are there any questions about that?
We just clarify, is it a 2-acre parcel or 2 acres of buffer?
2 acres of buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Scale, it's a scale issue for them. There's no geographical limit, except I did ask him about a Delaware project. He said it's all Pennsylvania funding, but there's not a geographical limit. Great. Well, we were glad to use CWMP to help share that. Stroud had asked to reach out to municipalities as they may either have parcels or know landowners who have parcels where buffers are targeted. So with that said, Kate, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm excited about this initiative that Kate and John worked a lot on, as well as the whole planning team. And this is a good way to offer a more formal way of offering technical assistance to municipalities. So Kate, you want to take over?
Sure.
Are you going to use your own slides, or you want me to advance slides?
No, if you could advance slides, Brian, that'd be great.
Okay.
So I will give you the, well, really a nod because I don't know that you can see me. So I'll just shout.
Yeah, I'll
so-
need a verbal cue.
Right. So I'm Kate Hutelmeyer with the Chester County Water Resources Authority, and I'm happy to talk to you today about our new Technical Assistance Group program that we are planning to offer through CWMP. TAG for short. I will just say we went back and forth a lot about what a good acronym is. So this is where we've landed. And so Brian, if you want to advance to the next slide. So what we're really hoping to do with this new program is create a format where the partners of CWMP, the technical partners, can offer coordinated technical assistance, guidance, expertise to our municipal members. And so we're focusing on areas of water resource and land use planning, like stormwater management, water quality improvement, sustainable land use planning, providing guidance on strategies for regulatory compliance in these general areas, as well as land preservation and general environmental project coordination and funding. And so really, this is something we're hoping to offer for free to our members, sort of as another member perk, this TA, where rather than coming, individually to 3 different organizations that touch on an issue you're worried about, you can go to CWMP, and internally, we will coordinate the partners who might be able to best address your issues, bring them all together. You come to one meeting for one discussion where hopefully, we can provide some guidance, give you some answers as a one-stop shop, rather than, a bunch of different phone calls that, may result in slightly conflicting answers or a bunch of different ideas that leave you maybe just as confused as where you started. And so, Brian, if you can hop over to the next one. So as I mentioned, we're planning to offer this to our municipal members through CWMP. We've also discussed that as time and capacity allow, if there is a particular organization, select entities within one of our member municipalities, perhaps an HOA or some other community group that is coordinating with their municipality on some issue, whether it's a stormwater management project or what have you, we might also be able to bring them in and provide some guidance. But so the way that we are intending to roll out this program is almost like, you remember in college how professors offered office hours? So it's a 1-hour time slot that we offer, or we intend to offer on a first come, first served basis. So we've got a very brief 1-page form that a member municipality would fill out, essentially just to tell us what's the issue you're looking for guidance on, you know, what's the problem you have, what are you hoping to get from the partners that we assemble. And so once we have that information, and that will all come through Brian Winslow, I think we've decided that Brian, John, and I will sort of act as the initial coordination team to pull in other CWMP partners and potentially even a broader network of technical experts. You know, we can assemble sort of a panel, if you will, to help our member municipalities work through, think through the issues, you know, whether that's discussing technical questions they may have, you know, working through stumbling blocks on projects that they have, pointing out, identifying potential funding opportunities they could pursue, or giving guidance on how to best pursue particular funding opportunities. And then providing additional connection points outwards to other, whether it's government agencies, funders, what have you, helping them down the chain in whatever their area of interest or concern is. Brian, if you could hop to the next. And so just as a quick reminder of who we're talking about when we talk about the CWMP partners, you know, we obviously have the members of the coordination and planning team, many of you are in the room today, who help provide sort of the backbone that is CWMP and the services that we provide to our municipalities already. But obviously we have a whole host of connections as individual organizations and CWMP outside of our network. And so whether that's pulling in folks from DEP, EPA, DCNR, what have you, NRCS, we have the capacity, we believe, to make sure that we can get the right people in the room so that we can have one, again, hopefully one at least preliminary conversation to point partners and members in the right direction. Brian, if you want to flip to the next slide. So this is the flyer that we put together. I think Brian put this one together with John, and it's lovely, beautiful, very colorful. But the really important thing about this, beyond the, you know, is that it includes the link to that quick form that municipalities can fill out to share their issues. I guess it's very brief, basically just to give us your information, who we should contact, what the issue is. And all of that information will go directly to Brian Winslow. His contact information is also included here if you have any questions about the program or additional interest. I'll also just point out for our non-municipal members, if there are ways that you want to get involved in the tag, thoughts that you have, you know, ways that you want to help, volunteers to get engaged in this process, you know, certainly feel free to reach out either to Brian, John, or myself. And I think there's one last slide here on my end, Brian. And so, yeah, this is the, reiterating, this is the link to the form. Very straightforward and simple, or like I said, email Brian, John, or myself. You know, we're really excited to get this up and running. I think once it gets off the ground, not only will it help us help our municipalities, our member municipalities, but it'll also help us as practitioners get more engaged in these communities, and perhaps we can begin to anticipate some of the concerns and issues better. And you know, ultimately, dreaming big here, there might come a day when we could use this program proactively. Say, hey, we're looking down the pike 10, 15 years. You know, what is your community dreaming about? How can we help as practitioners? I think that's it, but certainly John or Brian or anyone else who's been a part of this planning process, feel free to jump in.
The only thing I might add, Kate, is we did say that we would, if there's an entity inside a municipality, a house of worship, a business, a farmer, they're eligible for this. And it just says on the form that your township is aware of the project or issue. So that, you know, there's a little question, have you contacted the municipality about this? Just so we're sort of, they're aware as well. So that's really a good offer. So might be a house of worship that has a stormwater issue and that wants to bring this up.
We certainly don't want to be circumventing municipalities in addressing, local individual property owner concerns or what have you. But yeah, so if there is an entity in a municipality that's interested, we are sort of as a first line of defense, making sure that they have at least been in touch with, discussed the issue at the local level.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to ask whether you have a mechanism, and I know we talked about this, but like, to what extent can a HOA come directly to CWMP or to you or to Brian versus, a gatekeeper?
So some of that is still a little bit to be determined, but our thinking, at least at the launch of the program, is that if, House of Worship fills out this form and they say, we've been in contact with our, yes, we've been in contact with our municipality. We would likely follow up with them to get more details, but I think our plan was to also simultaneously reach out to the municipality to discuss it. And I think, unless there was some sort of major pushback or schedules just wouldn't allow it, if we were bringing in an individual landowner entity from a municipality, what have you, we would want to make sure that the meeting also included a direct representative from the municipality.
I think the outreach isn't probably going to reach every entity.
Yeah.
I would add to what Kate just said, though, a lot of individuals, organizations contact their local municipalities for information. And I think part of rolling this out is to have our member municipalities understand that this service is available. They may even be able to refer the House of Worship or other organizations to the simple form for, for questioning us about this program.
Yeah, so just to make sure everybody is aware, there's also sort of a parallel TA technical assistance opportunity. So I'm Ellen Kohler. And in addition to this capacity that's being brought to municipalities through EPA that is being led by the University of Maryland, help out to communities to be able to access to infrastructure investment and jobs act, water infrastructure. So the Water Center is the lead for that work in Pennsylvania. So we can work with municipalities, flooding challenges, the idea being to help that municipality identify ways to. And we've already started working with municipalities. For example, pulled together 5 boroughs that have water systems and helping them with figuring out how they're going to pursue their inventories that have to be completed. We're working with Avondale on their wastewater system and identify some things they can do to fix that. So those kinds of additional technical assistance are available. I left some flyers down at the end of the table. Also a flyer from DCNR about other funding besides the buffer funding that's available for communities.
And so just, for example, Ellen, love her and capable of suffering her in, Ellen is someone that we'll probably often want to try and include at the table. Or folks from DCNR to talk about different programs, so it's not just, we're not expecting municipalities to come every time and sit down with the same panel of folks and hear, the same sort of things over and over. We really are hoping to be able to pull in others where it's appropriate, where it might be genuinely beneficial, so that we can provide whomever it is with the wider universe of solutions, or at least ideas about solutions.
Yeah, that's one of the great things I think about this offering is that Ellen is available as a partner, and we will likely be pulling her in on several of these requests.
You all heard her volunteers.
So yes,
Right.
So it's a good way of reaching out to our partners.
Well, and being able to expand sort of the topics
Exactly.
able to address too.
Barring any other questions, I think that's all. all we had on tag, but feel free to reach out if you have other thoughts or questions or ideas.
Thanks for presenting that, Kate.
Thanks for putting together the slides to you and Brian.
Yeah, great. So now we have the flood study presentation.
So might call a bit of an audible here. I think I know everybody in the room, but a couple people. So we'll go hands up. Who has not heard my presentation on the flood study before? Okay, so there is some value in doing it. For the rest of you, enjoy Brian's Donuts virtually. So my name is Grant DeCosta. I'm the Director of Community Services at Brandywine Conservancy. I'm here to speak to you on the Brandywine flood study that we're leading in partnership with University of Delaware Water Resources Center and Chester County Water Resources Authority. This was largely a response to Hurricane Ida, which impacted our area on September 1st and 2nd of 2021. For the data here I'm talking about is based on Brandywine's experience, and that will inform what's to come. But this data here is from the USGS station that is at my organization's campus in Chadds Ford. So Brandywine Conservancy is part of the Brandywine Conservancy and Museum of Art. The Brandywine Museum of Art in Chadds Ford, most known, if the name doesn't immediately ring a bell, for our collection of Wyeth artwork, or perhaps more meaningful trains and critters at the holiday time, which we're also very proud of. So that gauge, is one of the oldest in Pennsylvania, so we have a lot of flood data. Our museum is in an old mill building along the banks of the Brandywine. Historic preservation is part of our mission, so we really are proud of that building and continuing the legacy of it. And we're used to having floods there. So with Hurricane Ida, it was predicted to be about 14.5 feet. That's just almost standard for us, not anything that would get us too excited. Prior record, as you see, was 17 feet. Unfortunately, Ida brought 21, nothing we had ever experienced before. So our organization had significant damage that's now over $10 million to 10 buildings on campus. In addition to flood height, of course, flood volume being important. Ida is off the chart here, as you can see, with the cubic feet per second being the measurement of volume. They are looking at all of the data still and assessing that. At the time when we put Ida off the chart, we were assuming that that number was going to ultimately be solidified as 33,300. What they're now looking at is it's probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 42,000, 46,000 cubic feet per second as that volume of water at peak flood. That would put the storm.
Is that at Wilmington or is that at Chadds Ford?
At Chadds Ford. So I think what I'm hearing is Wilmington may be 46 and we'll be 42, which would make that an 800-year storm. So, we were significantly impacted, but we were also significantly assisted by the community in our recovery efforts. Thanks to people even coming out and helping remove debris from our campus, we were able to open the day after Thanksgiving. So just a short window there of recovery time so that we could welcome our guests back into the museum for the holiday season, an important economic driver for our organization. Something else on that, but it slipped me now. Just keep moving on. So seeing all that support we got from the community, we felt it was important for us as a nonprofit with a mission to serve, to give back to the community. So we started dreaming up the flood study. And some of that was largely based on the map on the right that you'll see, which was completed by University of Delaware Water Resources Center in the days after Hurricane Ida, where they were looking at what happened during the flood and what are some of the early indicators that we see from it. So looking at the map, then on the left, being a map of our campus to orient you, Brandywine going down the left side, Route 1 across the top, the kind of black in the bottom left corner there being the mill building, but the other buildings shown are the other supporting buildings for our organization, including the 2 Conservancy buildings, our shared services where our marketing, development functions happen, as well as our facilities building. So the building of the museum, definitely in the regulatory flood way, everything else in the flood plain. So, as I said, we're used to floods, but this was of a scale we were not used to. And, we can't naturally move all those things or abandon operations, but it was something we looked at. But thankfully, what we saw from University of Delaware is that there are some easy opportunities to help with flooding. Primarily north of Route 1, a lot of properties that Brandywine owns, which total about 300 acres in the greater Chadds Ford area. A lot of those floodplains have 300 years of deposition, 8-foot difference between bank height and mean average water level. So the floodplains aren't functioning as they should. Some other things we know, we own a dam right there at Route 1 that we are in the process of removing. That is artificially backing up the water behind it and perhaps increasing the average groundwater level. So there is, once again, in that regard, a diminished capacity for flood storage. We also know that there's an old rail line just adjacent to the museum that on the eastern bank of the Brandywine is an earthen embankment versus on the western side, it's an elevated trestle. So that functions as an additional dam. And with the potential removal and floodplain restoration, there's a potential for up to 4 feet of flood mitigation there, which we know will impact us, but more importantly, will also help our neighbors downstream in the city of Wilmington. So this is one of the bridges, I think 11th Street in Wilmington. Obviously one of the big elements there we see is emergency and first responders stuck and not able to access the other side of the city to help those in need. This could easily be an image from Chester County and all of our bridges that were out of commission at that time. Once again, those could be emergency responders or average citizens from southern Chester County or the Coatesville area who no longer have a hospital trying to get eastward. So, they're now, many are going west for their medical needs, but some are still looking to head east. So there is a public health need for this and emergency services response that reducing flooding would benefit. When we look at our neighbors downstream in Wilmington that absorb all of our both, water quality, but water quantity impacts, we need to be a good neighbor to them. So with the flood study, we looked at partnering with Chester County Water Resources Authority and University of Delaware, as I've mentioned. We reached out to FEMA and had an initial favorable award. And we were originally looking at a scope that just went from the state line to the confluence of the east and west branch because of a capacity and funding limitation. Thankfully, both Chester County and Delaware County stepped up and provided additional funding using their American Rescue Plan Act funding, or ARPA, to augment what we had coming from FEMA, and we were able to expand that scope to do the full extent of the watershed from the city of Wilmington to the uppermost headwaters of East and West Branch and Honeybrook. Our focus is not as strongly on Wilmington, but I will talk about, what we are doing down there, largely in coordination with others, which is our second bullet point there. Third bullet point being that we want to mitigate flooding. We are not looking to study flooding. We want to find solutions. For example, someone died in Downingtown. We think that's unacceptable. We need to reverse that trend. And then the transferability of our project, we think could resonate throughout, if not the immediately surrounding watersheds, if not the mid-Atlantic, because our causes of flooding, our land use patterns, and the possible solutions should be similar. So receiving that funding, we convened a core team of the study partners, which in addition to the co-leads include Westchester University, Chester County Planning Commission, Biohabitat, Stroud Water Research Center, and CWMP, and Chester County Water Resources Authority has some existing contracts with engineering firms that help manage their structural and other, water resource management work that they do. So they are part of that core team as well. We've also convened a flood advisory committee that's open to anybody to attend, and I'll get into that in a minute. But looking at the project tasks, flood working group, we've convened that as well as developing an advisory committee. We're working through the flood identification and modeling right now. For flood identification, we're going to have a lot more outreach on that. And we also know that there are going to be some streams or tributaries that contribute an inordinate amount of flooding to the main stem that are going to receive further investigation, and we're currently identifying those. We know we can't do that level of investigation and study on every tributary. And so some of the recommendations, unfortunately, may be for additional study. That's kind of like having an acronym within your acronym, but unfortunately, that's the reality of things. We'll be moving into flood relief analysis, and none of this is linear, so some of this is already happening already, including reaching out to some partners and entities within the watershed who have already done some of this flood identification work on their own. So we're going to be working through that and vetting it, and then ultimately resulting in our report. Flood Advisory Committee is those additional professionals that are not, or just interested parties that are not part of the funded study team. They contribute a lot to what we need to both learn and make sure that this study is going to achieve the goals we set for ourselves. But for example, there's other benefits to having this additional group because, like in the case of the Army Corps of Engineers, they cannot participate as a core study team member based on their charter because they do that work. And we did talk to Army Corps in the early days as we were envisioning this, and they said, yeah, we can do a flood study for you. It will take at least 5 years, and you guys are going to be on the sideline. You'll get what we develop. You'll be able to participate through the NEPA process, but, you're not going to be able to influence the direction this takes. So, they supported us and said, we can participate in a flood advisory committee. And one of the important parts of having that is so that they are providing subject matter expert review as it aligns with Army Corps future implementation funding. So whatever we study and recommend, the data will support an application to the Army Corps when we go into the implementation phase of this project. We had our first meeting October 4th. Everybody should have a doodle poll that might have just come out about an hour ago for the next meeting, which we're looking for. So stay tuned on that one and please attend. We are recording those and creating notes for the meeting. So we're documentation that discussion so that we can have as robust engagement as we can. Those meetings are probably going to be occurring every 6 months throughout the study period, so more opportunities coming. The study period, we designed this as a 1-year study, both because there's a sense of urgency and also because we have a large component of the work being done by students, both at University of Delaware and Westchester University, so we needed to fit within the academic calendar. We did benefit from a little bit of an earlier start than is indicated here because some of those master's students at UD completed their thesis in the spring and were able to start with the background research. So we're already underway. But it's an aggressive timeline, but we think we have the partners in place to help do this, both those that are funded and all of those who are contributing their time to the advisory committee. I'll talk about public meetings in a minute, but you can kind of see the timeline there where we're hoping for a June 2024 release. We kicked all this off on August 22nd with a big press conference. SeungAh managed to get out of speaking at that because she had one of her bosses, Commissioner Maxwell, speak. We were also joined by Chair of Delaware County Council, Dr. Monica Taylor, as well as two of our local elected officials, Senator Kane and Representative Sappy, whose districts represent the largest proportion of the watershed. It was great that we got a lot of press out of that because part of the important work is a large public awareness campaign. We know we were successful because at the same day that we had the press conference, we launched a flood study that Brandywine, a website that Brandywine is hosting, as well as an email address that people can contact us. And we received numerous emails through that address that day. And we continue to have them coming in. The website will be a work in progress throughout the study period with updates coming and key things advertised such as public meetings. Project coordination has become a larger effort than was originally designed with the flood study. Shortly after we kicked off, we found out that there is a lower Brandywine flood study being conducted by the city of Wilmington. That is within the jurisdictional boundary of the city. There's also a rewilding effort that is happening primarily around the Northeast neighborhood, one of the hardest impacted communities in Wilmington for flooding. Fortunately, the University of Delaware is participating in both of those. So they had been an early liaison to make sure we were coordinating. Since that time, the Conservancy has reached out and met with both of the principal leads of those projects. So we're timing things such as public meetings to reduce public confusion. If we're doing surveys, which we all know will be part of it, survey fatigue, all of those types of things, and the inability for people to come out to continuous meetings. So we are going to be having those most likely in down Delaware in coordination with them. However, as part of this work, we found out about two additional flood studies that are going on. One that's happening within the city of Coatesville that is focused on underground infrastructure, primarily around Gibbons Run, which goes from the area of Route 30 and the Y and heads in a generally southwesterly direction through, ultimately through some Cleveland Cliffs property where it discharges into the Brandywine. They have a culvert that is problematic and backs up floodwater, so that's really the focus of what they're doing. In talking to the city of Wilmington, we both found out at the same time that DENREC also received funding to do flood study and risk assessment modeling within the city of Wilmington as well as Slaughter Beach for some reason. Somehow they're joined in the eyes of FEMA. So FEMA is the overarching to all of this. All of these studies, except for the rewilding, have some FEMA funding to them, if not the majority. Unfortunately, FEMA is not coordinated, that they did not tell us about all these other studies. So we've been discovering it ourselves and once again, spending a lot of time on that coordination effort so we can benefit from that. And for instance, in that, we had a joint meeting with Wilmington and DENREC where we found out a lot of what they're modeling is going to accelerate the work within the city of Wilmington because they both propose to model the same thing, unbeknownst to each other. So there's an assumption now that there's going to be some funding alleviation to the city of Wilmington because the DENREC effort is going to be completed sooner. So the city is already looking at possibly offering some additional funding to our study for that gap space between the jurisdictional boundary of the city and the state line, which is not the primary focus of our study. Partly because we knew things were going on in Delaware, but also knowing the character of the watershed and what we anticipate to be a large volume contributing number of tributaries in that area. But, you know, if there's additional investigation needed, we think we can add to that. We also want to see if there's any opportunity to come in under budget and repurpose funding for the implementation activities, which all of the funders have said they would support. You know, we're all happy to do on the ground work more than studying. So quick update on the status. Our models are well underway, and SeungAh's going to talk a little bit more about that. We are also doing a build-out analysis that will help inform because once again, you know, if Hurricane Ida, an 800-year storm, is almost our baseline now, we need to be future focused on what flooding is going to look like. So we're working through with a subgroup of our core partners, and we'll be inviting in others to help participate in that build-out and verify the results of that. We're doing some watershed and land use analysis mapping for some other non-structural solutions that we're investigating, such as just identifying the highest infiltrating soils, especially in the uppermost portions of the watershed, and what's that overarching land use right now, and might there be additional opportunities from some non-structural solutions. And if anybody's curious, we can talk a little bit more about that. We're also doing a lot of site visits. We had an initial meeting with City of Wilmington. We're going on a city tour on December 6th to go ahead and investigate further. We are working to design what an additional municipal intake is going to look like, because we know, for instance, a lot of the public works crews have on-the-ground knowledge about the most important aspects of recurring flooding. We are developing an online mapping tool that anybody can participate in to alert us to areas of concern that we should know about. But we also know we're going to get a lot of my basement, my backyard in that. And that's important data, but we need to vet through that for really to achieve the goals of this study. But we'll still capture that data. But we think, a lot of the municipal work is important there, which is why I'm glad to speak to CWMP today. And then lastly, the general public meetings. So as I mentioned, two studies in Delaware, 3 studies in Delaware, and then the Coatesville work. So we're coordinating when we're going to do some public meetings with them. We had hoped to do those this fall, but that timing doesn't look like it will work for making sure we have that alignment so that both studies benefit and we don't scoop, and then the public thinks that they'd already provided their input, so they don't need to come to the next one. So those are going to be a little bit delayed, but we do already have on the books, our first public meeting is going to be December 14th at Downingtown Borough Hall. Timing of that is nice because Downingtown has a flood committee that has been active and engaged for many months now. And so we've presented to them and are looking to coordinate further. So immediately after our public meeting would be the Downingtown Flood Committee meeting. So we're hoping perhaps it may generate some additional support for the work they're doing and show the alignment and solutions-oriented goals of our flood study as well. So we'll be messaging this a whole lot more and getting flyers out so anybody can share through their networks as well. I think that's version for this group that I think touches everything important and didn't bore everybody who's heard this maybe a dozen times already, but open for questions. I know it was a lot.
Grant, I'm curious about the land use. Is this starting with stuff from the Chester County Planning Commission or previous work that you've done in terms of identifying, classifying the land by purpose?
So, yeah, we're going to take a fresh look at everything. We've, of course, done these for different reasons before, but looking at them particularly for flooding, we're going to start fresh. Bringing in, the soils layer is updated every now and then. So using that soil survey will give us infiltration classifications of soils. The challenge is one of the land use layers that they are old right now. The Brandywine staff met with Planning Commission just on Tuesday and talked through some of that, but that's a challenge. So what we're thinking we may do is going to be similar to the modeling you hear is UD is taking a lead on that, and they've broken up sub-basins within the watershed. So we're going to take a similar approach, and that will give us an opportunity to do some verification of what we're seeing, and, in a smaller scale, so we can look at it and say, does the land use classification code match, the great aerials we now have, in particular from Chester County, to say, do those match up? What level of additional, ground truthing might we need to do? And when I say ground truthing, a lot of that can happen, from the computer, but being able to work through that so we get to a base layer that we're comfortable with. And then, drilling down further on, how does that land use potentially present opportunities?
I raise it because the Oxford region is in the process. By the end of December, all 6 of our planning commissions will have marked up maps produced by the county as to what they thought the land use is. We're finding radical differences between what the county thought the land use was and what the actual land use is. I have to say, having done it for West Nottingham, it did not take us very long to mark the thing up if you're starting with an easy to use a map, because people know whether something is a farm or whether something is an institution And I'm
Was
not
that,
volunteering anybody, but I'm just wondering whether CWMP municipalities might be willing to make it easy for them to do a quick, if you will, ground truth or
right,
run it by folks at a
was that through
planning
the
commission.
ORPC or through the voluntary EAC?
This is from the, well, it's through the RIPC. We're about to do, some way they're contiguous, but we're about to do a comp plan.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay, just because it's helpful to hear how that was presented and who was able to take the lead.
yeah, so it went through ORPC in terms of the request going out to the planning commissions to do it, but all of them, there's not been any resistance.
I think it could also be, and SeungAh is going to talk about the modeling in a bit more depth, but where we are, if we're doing preliminary desktop cross-checking of the land use, after the models are run and we have some data from our local communities about where we know flooding is occurring, if there are inconsistencies between what we're modeling as flooding and what communities are telling us are flooding, those might be places as well where we can go in and do a bit more direct outreach, both with the municipality and maybe some others. Really try and refine curve numbers we're using in those areas, see if we can tweak land use layer we're using, or if there might be another explanation for the inconsistencies, like infrastructure issues, which we know.
Yeah, that's a great point, and just, take it further and take the heat off SeungAh and,
I don't even have to present it.
Exactly. So one of the efforts that we're undergoing right now with that sub-basin is they are then calibrating what the model is showing versus what the on-the-ground data is. So I think where we see some radical changes, the land use may be one of those elements as to why we're seeing, it not calibrated well. So yeah, there are different ways, as Kate pointed out, that we may say, once again, this is an area where more is needed, or if we're in an area with a large amount of preservation, we know that land use particularly hasn't changed, but likewise, we know where a lot of development has occurred. So at what level? I mean, it would be great if we could get the planning commissions to all do that for us. I don't have a high estimate of success knowing some of the municipalities within the watershed.
Can you speak to the build-out analysis?
Because we're looking at how increase impervious surfacing is going to accelerate our flooding.
No, I
And how
understand
that's
that,
going to feed into the
How
model.
are you going to do it?
We haven't decided
Okay.
exactly yet. That's part of what we're working through. We, have developed our methodology. Rob, I don't know if that's something not to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, we just met yesterday, a core group of Conservancy staff. We're going to be looking at data sources for impervious surfaces right now and looking at, we're also going to be hopefully aligned with what Jerry's doing at UD, looking at specific watersheds and looking at taking a smaller watershed to begin with to kind of work that methodology out. So basically looking what's currently impervious and then what is being allowed, in terms of zoning for additional impervious surfaces.
You're looking at municipal zoning,
Yeah,
impervious cover standards within the zone.
right.
And that was part of our conversation with the Planning Commission on Tuesday too, is they have some additional data layers that aren't public yet, but would be helpful to the study. So, we may get some advanced use of those while they're still continuing to work through them and make them available to the public. But the timing is that, they recognize the benefit and perhaps giving us an early peek at some of that. But I think you volunteered to be on that. Yeah, so,
It's one of those
we
options.
welcome it.
Happy to help.
Yes, of course.
What's that saying? How can I help?
Well, but like, not to be, facetious on that, but, that would be one of them, we have a methodology document, we can share, and then, we need others to help us verify our results and challenge us that we're getting to the,
And then it's also possible, we haven't necessarily talked extensively through this yet, but it's also possible that those build-out analyses themselves could in turn become some format outreach tools to municipalities as we are,
Our non-structural solutions.
yes, as we're talking to them about potential flood mitigation strategies. Obviously, there are structural, there are green infrastructure, and then there are these non-structural policy changes. One more tool in the toolbox.
And we have the DVRPC growth projections, and Chester County Planning Commission took it a step further and actually modeled out what they may look like per municipality, and we have mapping of that. They have some spreadsheets. So we could potentially overlay that and say, in this, subbasin or this municipality, let's add this factor of the impervious or whatever it may be, so we can get to a granular level rather than just saying, let's increase it by, 12.5% watershed wide. We may be able to get to some scale combined with zoning, growth projections, all that, we might have some good, well, that's the goal, that we have something that we're all confident in.
I think it's good to compare and contrast. Growth projections are not the same increases in impervious cover. So,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
got to be really careful.
Yeah, so the work the planning commission did on that, that's not just population, but, that brings in, almost a, per person average acre of impervious needed for all of those ancillary things for the built environment, another Wawa.
I'm gonna guess I know the answer to this, but just to make sure, I'm wondering if you've tapped into what you've been doing.
That's on our list to look through, and Shippensburg and Chesapeake Conservancy and,
Well, because, they got all this,
yes.
you get all these data sets, so there's.
And I think that theirs is that's where we really get into the data challenge. I think the latest DVRPC land use is 2015.
Yeah.
Shippensburg did 2018. I don't know that they haven't updated beyond that. I think parts of the watershed, but in our area, I thought it was still 2018.
Well, anyway, just.
Yeah.
I think
There's no reason not to. And they did all those projections too. Obviously at a higher level, but it's, as you're saying, getting different analyses to be testing. The other project I just want to mention quickly, and I hesitate to do this.
Is it funded by FEMA? Tell me.
No.
What do you got?
No, I'm going to tell you, it's another agency. Have you tapped into all the projects that NOAA has funded?
we have attempted.
So there's a larger project, CC Run, which is looking at climate projection. So anyway, I just.
Climate projections are part of the modeling that's being done as
I
well.
don't need to present now.
Yes, you do.
Well, no, I want, you have maps. I like maps.
Hey,
Give me some
Grant.
maps.
Just a reminder of what Ellen said. So Claire Jans and Shippensburg, they also developed a spatially explicit
Right.
future
Right,
built out
that's-
scenario.
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sure you're aware of that, but that would
Yeah.
encapsulate those projections spatially.
Yeah, so again, just even if you end up using it, just so you have somebody else's analysis to consider when you're thinking about how to do the built out piece. It's already been done, so.
Have you had conversations with anyone who's sort of taken those models and then looked at them
Very locally?
at the hyper-local level? Because I know the conversations I've had.
Brandywine, for the Brandywine study that we did a few years ago.
Mhm.
We looked at that
And how,
population.
how close did it seem to align? Because
Yeah, it's hard to say because it was so new.
I thought for Chester County, there may have been some discrepancy. Or that it was kind of the rationale was kind of watershed-wide projections and development.
Yeah,
That they didn't
I
kind of
assume that's true.
line up with what the county.
but we would
Counties.
certainly.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
look
and
at
it's just,
DVRPC
that's
as
what and they have a data set that you might, right, that's the other thing. So I also had a very specific question. What are you doing about mushroom? Is that one of the, because they're called ag, they're not ag.
I don't think we separate them out.
They should be captured by the impervious layer too.
As long as, because that's always
And then most of them have been there for so long. We know there's some mega facilities. that
Right, but in terms
built,
of land use, they're often called
So-
ag, and
Yeah.
that's,
Right.
that's not helpful.
But they are captured separately.
Yep.
So there's the land use layer, but then there is a distinct impervious cover layer that we
Right,
can
okay.
overlay, so where we can see the hardscape regardless of.
There's not a ton in Brandywine.
Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have all
Right, it's
the,
red and white.
It's white clay and a little bit in red clay.
good, but like,
But it's
getting
a,
people to,
yeah.
You have 6 minutes, you know.
Right.
I mean, I know Grant had just, if you don't know me, I'm SeungAh Byun with Chester County. So Grant kind of ran through the task for the flood study. I'm going to touch a little bit more on task 2 briefly, and then more into the detail of task 3, the hydrologic and hydraulic models. And I can't take credit for it as much. This is the work. So Grant had mentioned how we were going to collect data identifying flood sites. So some of this data that you see in the red flood hazard areas is based on FEMA collected data. So what we would actually like to do and make a request from municipalities and also the public is kind of do that ground truthing piece. Because we can model it over the entire watershed, but that's going to be at a larger scale. We're not going to get the localized flooding areas. So kind of overlaying what the local knowledge is saying, comparing those to our model. Just to give you a closer example, specifically for tropical storm Ida. So I'm going to go a little bit into the hydrology and hydraulic modeling. So basically, hydrology, when it rains, where does it go on the surface? Where does all the runoff go? And then in terms of the hydraulics, that modeling is more about what ends up in stream. I think that Grant kind of touched on Ida, but throughout our aged areas, so basically we saw 7.29 at Glenmore, 8.2 at Chester Springs and Modena, and 5.1 inches at Stratford. But the 100-year 24-hour storm is 7.62 inches based on NOAA. And then also, if we look at the intensity, Springs, that's also higher than the 100-year intensity. Then you add on a storm like Ida along with the topography of Chester County, accentuates the amount that ends up in stream and running really fast down. So the peak rainfall was above Coatesville was over 8 inches, and Downingtown. So basically, those two. Just to, I know Grant had gone through some of the storms. Jerry Kaufman had done some research and found another storm, Army Corps study of the Brandywine Basin, of the Delaware River Basin. That was in 1839. That was up over 30,000 CFS. And then Ida comes in right now at 33,000. So if my numbers contradict what Grant just told you, what the numbers will end up being in the end, go with his numbers, because there's another study that was put out by USGS where they did high water marks. They studied high water marks where some of the USGS gauges, it actually went above what they're reading. So the high water marks kind of supplement that information. So Grant mentioned what we thought may have been a 500-year storm, maybe a 100-year or an 800-year storm, based on data. And that report is out now. So just more graphs. Just highlighting, the extent of Ida. So you can see discharge went off the charts of over 30,000. The height in the stream was muted. So at Chad's Ford, it was 21. Look, so that's the discharge again at Chad's Ford that you saw. Right, and then this is the discharge at Wilmington. So we're looking at over 33,000 CFS at Chad's Ford at 2 a.m. Wilmington, it was at 33,700 CFS at 11 a.m. So you can see that I'm going down the Brandywine. And that increase in flow. So we have a number of USGS gauges, not just Chester County, but Delaware, as well as USGS and other entities that have contributed to their network that help us kind of determine what the peak flows and the stage heights are throughout a number of rain events. And this is for IDA, basically taking those gauges. You can see where the peaks are, and you can see where. This is Chad's Ford. So based on this is modeled, isn't it? Is that modeled?
I think that's, that's measured, but that may be also altered as Grant mentioned that they
And the
may
USGS
flip it so
study,
that Wilmington is lower. Now it's, Wilmington is higher because it's downstream, because we were trying to figure out why it would be.
So this Brandywine and Chad's Ford, so where it goes up almost up to 50,000, that's based on the USGS data, and the other gauges haven't been adjusted.
Yeah, I think they're readjusting that. It's going to be lower than that, and then
So in terms of modeling the hydrology of the Brandywine, we broke it down into subbasins. There are a total of 17 subbasins. And so initially we started with E5, which is Buck. Just to start out our initial modeling and get some things out and see how those go. So basically for Buck Run, drainage area. And we selected areas where there is actually a USGS gauge at the pour point, so at the bottom end of the drainage area, so we can actually see how the model compares to real data. So kind of see where. So this is the discharge, and then this is during IDA modeled, and then, or I'm sorry, this is USGS. And then this is the gauge height, so how high the stream is. And then we also looked at the soils as part of the model throughout each of the 17 subbasins. And also land cover, which we discussed. So for Buck Run, we're seeing about ag of 51%, wooded about 20%, and then single family residential about 14%. To give you a sense of landscape of that watershed. So this is the model that we're using. It's TR55. And it basically uses the curve number method. So we basically put in data, the soils information for Buck Run. I'm not going that detailed. And then this is the output. So this is what you would see during us. This is the 100-year. So modeling the 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year storms through the and we took the data for IDA and just did a calibration to see. time when the peak happens. We're also looking into determining the volume as well. So again, I mentioned we did that for Buck Run. And then the next one we did was for Broad Run, B7. So similarly, that's the output that we got. So we did the land use, soil, and so on. And just in terms of the calibration, we did modify the curve numbers that in model based on some research. Jersey and other places, just because I think they are 55, they kind of do more like ag as opposed to that we know we have.
So is that fairly common, that the models predict a much more rapid drop-off than the actual flow?
So this is a single sub-basin. So it depends on how big you make it.
Okay.
It's also where, so at this point, we're actually doing so we've, to date, Andrew, you guys have completed the West Branch Brandywine. So basically, they Honeybrook all the way down.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far we've gotten with the routing. Yeah, that's the big.
And TR55 didn't originally do routing, but they've added, the newer versions have a routing component. So it actually isn't where all of a sudden you're just summing all these sub-basins and no attenuation or. So it actually does account for travel.
Scale is not as big of an issue as it
This,
used
so
to be.
it's not as much because of the, yeah, because TR55 is a small one. Just to go into the hydraulic analysis, which we're just doing kind of the data collection right now. We haven't run the model, but I know you've seen this picture. The idea of hydraulic analysis is using the FEMA HEC-RAS models, which are available, which delineate the floodplain, floodway, and the heights that are available. So it also incorporates the flood profile. So this comes out of the FEMA back there, all these graphs. So you could see this is at Route 1, showing the elevation. So 167, that's here, and 176 just upstream, and then 171 at Route 1. Brad kind of talked about this as well. So this is kind of the 171. That's the 100-year, and this is kind of just over top the FEMA flood. And then this is the example Grant kind of spoke through about possibly removing the embankment, and also elevating to the west. So it would actually reduce the elevation, the floodplain elevation from 171 to 167, then allow more flow to pass uninhibited. So potentially this would be a project we would explore through the hydraulic model. See if this would actually happen. And also, while we're doing it at a watershed scale, is not just a project, this one particular project, but what's happening upstream and doing combination projects as well. So for task 4, following the models, once the models are set up, we'll look at different scenarios, looking at a number of mitigation strategies and implementing them in the model, and seeing those impacts as well as structural, non-structural. And Then eventually task 5 would, we would end up.
The stream cleaning is sort of an concept. Clean to the extent that you're removing
Stream cleaning.
Well, that's what like the, what level of stream cleaning? That'll be part of the analysis.
Hopefully it's just underpasses. Hopefully it's that.
Well, so would that be something that you'd consider as mitigation, is road stream crossings in a way that are
Well, so-
right-sized for larger storm events?
So, I mean, I think it would be, if you knew a storm event was coming, check those.
Yeah.
Make sure they're clear.
But in terms of recommendations for the longer term for flood mitigation, having municipalities have different strategies for, because one of the things that I think, so financing perspective, what we often see is municipalities going, okay, we're going to take the least cost approach to that culvert replacement, right? Which does not mean right sizing it. But if they were to right size it, they would actually experience a cost savings over the term of that. Because what ends up happening is they end up having to replace that culvert. So they right sized it, they do that once, they don't right size it, they end up doing it 4 or 5 times, and that ends up being. That's hard to get a municipality to believe, because most likely anyway, investing in that long-term piece. But if there could be, if there were recommendations that came out of the plan that helped municipalities understand, one, the value of the right sizing, but also identifying resources to make sure they pursue those right-sized bridges. Say through my private program, the Dirt and Gravel Road Program.
And so one of my questions for municipalities was going, with that, I don't understand enough of yet, but I had thought in my mind could be a barrier to right sizing is, if you were doing right size versus just a repair and replacement, is there additional engineering, permitting, all of that cost that's a barrier to doing it?
Right.
So might there be a recommendation that there's an expedited process or reduction so that we're planning our future infrastructure needs? That would probably take, regulatory change.
Yeah, I'll just say there's been studies in Western Massachusetts that even with all those costs, it still ends up being more cost effective to right size than to do. But
Which I get, but
understand-
to your
right,
public
but
that's electing you at a hyper-local level,
Yep.
having,
It's-
they can't forecast out far
It's
enough to
sort
make
of-
it.
It's identifying those practices that we want to accelerate in
Yeah.
terms of the permitting process. That I think, I do. We're having the same conversation now, ironically, about wildfires. Under, in terms of being able
Brush
to, right,
cutting.
exactly, how to be able to have those practices identified already in a forest plan so that you can speed up the implementation of the project. And so it's also how to, but that's, like,
Yeah.
there's that, getting regulatory entities to. The other piece is how do we make sure the financing drives towards those choices as opposed to the short-term choices that are going to result.
If you could point us to the studies,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Yeah.
That can help influence that
Yeah.
conversation. We can learn on that.
Yeah.
I think this may come up in some of the public meetings too, Brian. I don't know whether the project manager, and
Well, yeah, and
it
identify,
might
right.
be hard to do a really detailed.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be.
Studies, But at least as a recommendation, case study maybe some.
Or barriers to our mitigation strategies might be the better way to identify it, because we can't carry it through to a solution.
And you could right size and you could just have.
well, no, but the right side, like, ideally, the right sizing strategies don't have as many. There aren't as many free space, so they don't have as many opportunities And then there's more. But the other thing, lose my train of thought. The other thing that could be an outgrowth of this is working with your RPC in terms of transportation for road stream crossings. And again, incentivizing prioritizing those projects that are not going to have they're truly right sizing for, like getting all those partners on board in terms of how to realize those kinds of projects as
We were going to convene a PennDOT task force. Should I hear you not volunteering to be the chair of that?
Well, I don't know that I'm not sure I can justify being the chair of it, but I can definitely justify.
No, I'm just looking for a chair.
Yeah, I don't really have the funding to do that.
I mean, I'm from Upper Euclid, and we've got all these issues. We have $500,000 worth of projects and no funding mechanism. And now this whole funding mechanism that we thought was available to us is all gummed up by Westchester and Westchester University. The suit that Westchester University.
Because you had a fee in place, you were going to use your fee.
We were talking about a fee. And that seems to be the reasonable way to get to some of these problems. And so we're on like indefinite hold until that gets resolved.
Yeah.
And then we have crisscrossing Upper Euclid, we have the Turnpike Commission, which nobody knows anything about. I had to go find a culvert underneath their.
It's too bad Kate left because Kate's.
And
She's going to be your co-chair.
And then PennDOT's the same way.
No, I mean about Upper Euclid, yeah. PennDOT's the same way. PennDOT's getting a little better. Talk to Amanda. PennDOT's getting a little better.
And I think, and I raised this in the past in another meeting, I think politically, it's easier if you approach these as an emergency service issue, using the examples of Wilmington and the fact that Downingtown has, there's one bridge crossing the Brandywine, and if that's out, that impacts. So it's not only,
it's hazard
you can
mitigation.
push that as an agenda as well, that this is an
It
emergency.
goes away.
I think that gets more traction than the environment, but it gets to the same solutions.
Right. But that emergency thing has been here for 75 years. And every time you come up to the short-term memory of everybody where this happens, the bridge is the problem. There's studies done that show that the bridge is the problem. There's no way to resolve it. And the next flood, the bridge is still a problem.
That bridge is getting replaced in the next couple of years. Everybody know that? The bridge.
Are you talking about bridge in Upper Euclid?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
Bridges.
I'm talking about a specific bridge. I just happen to know that bridge is getting replaced, so.
Well, all the more reason to make sure we got PennDOT.
We got the one at 100 and the Turnpike, which just spills all kinds of water down. And our guys are the ones that are out there waist deep, resolving the problem as the cars can't get through. Nobody's ever stopped a subdivision of the Turnpike, ever. So we have all these people that can't get to where they're going or can't get home. And
So the Turnpike is
What PennDOT's doing with their MS4 permit.
I don't know what the Turnpike's doing. It should be.
We've heard from PennDOT and Turnpike.
And I think there
Because
are,
I think
there
got
are
huge
problems.
issues with the Turnpike.
Well, with the 3 lanes coming to Downingtown to the downtown exit, there's like millions of cubic yards of material that's going to be stored in Euclid as part of this whole process. All we're trying to do is mill for rainwater.
Right, but
Come
so
on.
this is where the IIJ funding that went to the transportation entity should be available to deal with these kinds of.
Right.
So that's part of the reason for what I was saying about DPRPC. Anyway, let's Yeah, the term.
I'm just gonna check to see if Brian is still with us.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm still here.
How are you feeling, Brian?
Okay. I'm going to sleep after this.
Brian, I can probably move forward in the agenda.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know we're at 11:30. Is there anything else to share before people head out? Sounds like a good, robust discussion on the flooding. Yeah, I'll share the recording and the flyers. I had the tag flyer, that was the other flyer, and I could share those again with CWMP